as I stated, hello, my name is Gervonni, and I am the founder and executive director of Gervonni Cares nonprofit. I serve Phoenix, Arizona, focused on the West Valley, and I just wanted to share. I'll start off with one story, but I want to tell you what our nonprofit does first. We provide housing stability, and we provide eviction prevention services, workforce development. We have a food pantry and financial literacy, so a bit of wraparound support. But through our eviction prevention, I'm a housing stability legal advocate. Through Innovations for Justice, and our organization is approved through the Supreme Court of Arizona. And so I know today you guys heard a lot of logistics, a lot of stories about empowerment from lawyers, but I'm gonna share you a story that talks about being on a grassroots nonprofit, the people on the ground. Because we heard, and I remember, I think her name was Jody from the Jailhouse Lawyers, and she said, the closer you are to the people, you're closer to the solution, right? So with that being said, and I'm gonna talk about this story because it just happened yesterday, like so ironic. So I received a call from one of our families, and she received a referral to our organization from her church. And she stated that, hey, I'm about to be evicted. I'm about to be evicted on Monday, is what she felt, because she received a 5-day notice, a court date on Monday. In her thought process, the date of the court is the day I'm going to be evicted. She had no knowledge of the process. And she said, they referred me to you through a network meeting that I just had 3 days prior from today. And I said, okay, let me explain to you your process and see if I can help you through our scope of services. So you understand our scope of services as a legal advocate, community-based justice worker, is we can mediate with the landlord. We can go to court with them side, help them with their paperwork for court, and we can educate them on the eviction process. We're providing safe spaces for them, educating them to make sure that they're not overwhelmed in court because they feel, scared. They don't have that knowledge. They don't have that power, right? So she called and I said, okay, let me tell you the scope of services of what we do. And I said, I can help you. She said, well, my church is giving me money. And I said, go ahead, tell me your story. Because the first thing we want to do is listen. We don't want to solve other people's problems without listening to what they need. So I had to listen to what she needed first. And she said, hey, I have funds. The church is going to help me, but I'm going to be evicted on Monday and I won't have all the money till Tuesday. I said, call your landlord now. Call them now and ask them if you can do a promise to pay. And she said, what's that? I don't know what that is. I don't think they do that. I said, call them and find out. A promise to pay is an agreement. What can you afford? Will you have everything on Tuesday? And she said, yes, but court is Monday. So I went ahead and said, call them. She gets another phone. She calls her landlord. And when she calls her landlord, I can hear through the speakerphone. And the landlord says, yes, I will do a promise to pay. And I will stop the court proceedings so you will not be evicted. But first, I need you to just email me the letter from your church stating that they would help you. And then I need you to sign, I'll send it over, an agreement to promise that on Tuesday that you will have the remainder of your funds. She said, yes, I can do that and I will. I get paid, I will do that. She said, okay. And she said, thank you very much. I said, I'm not done. She said, what do you mean? What else is there to do? You helped me. I said, no. We want to make sure that eviction proceeding has been stopped. So after the court process, even though you don't go to court, I want to make sure the case still did not file that eviction. I want to ensure that the landlord did her duty to ensure the court did not file it. She said, oh, because if you have an eviction on your record still, it could be hard for you. And it's hard to remove it later just from that simple error. So being on the ground, right? That's my job. My job to come in, get the information. That's why I'm here today. Thank you for the opportunity. Is to get that information so I can take it back to the community, take it back to the people we serve, to ensure they know about the resources that are out there that helps people who need assistance in court pro bono. So that's one of my stories. I'll feel free to share another story with you guys later. I just want to let you know the impact of what we do as community-based justice workers and as housing stability legal advocates. Same thing, they just changed the wording around a little bit. So with Gervonni Cares, and I won't say nonprofit, so it is a nonprofit organization, but I'm trying to change that trajectory. Social benefit organization, because we help a lot of families. A lot of people think the services that we do, they are pro bono and that we should do everything for free, but we're receiving a benefit for that, right? So we're a grassroots nonprofit organization. Through the housing stability program through Innovations for Justice, I just want to share one more story with you guys, right? So as a grassroots nonprofit organization, I just want to share that we have a responsibility, right? We have a responsibility for our community. Our responsibility is to know the needs of that community. We cannot provide any services to our community without knowing what their needs are. So that's my responsibility for the organization, right? And so with this program, when it first was brought up to me, I forgot how I came about it, I'm so glad I did. We were already providing housing stability services, offering rent payments for families up to $1,000, not a whole thing, because we still have to hold people accountable for their, when they need to pay rent. We're not a Band-Aid service. So when it came about, this was perfect for us, because now there is no when the phone rings. There is no, we don't have funding. Click, there is not that. No, we do not have funding. Are you facing an eviction? Listen, I can help you. Tell me your story. So there is no end. We provide those wraparound support services because we have financial literacy. I am a certified financial educator instructor. We have food pantry to offset those costs for our families when they're facing an eviction, so they can focus more on putting more money down for the landlord. We have those workforce development, because sometimes we have people who stay in those jobs or leave them and they still stay in those same homes, paying the same bills. And we know how they say eventually you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? So I'm just gonna tell you this one story I have with a client. I'm gonna sit down, and I call her family, with our families. And so she contacted me and she said, hey, I face an eviction. I just got my notice. And she said they put it on my door today. And I said, okay. I described to her our scope of services of what we can do as a housing stability legal advocate, and let her know that I can attend court with her, I can meet with the landlord. But I wanted to listen to her whole story. I said, how did you get in this predicament? And she stated, I was in this predicament because I work one job from home. It's just my son and I. She said, but I also do Uber Lyft. I had a car accident. I have $1,000 deductible. I have not been able to catch up because of that deductible, and I have not been able to get my car fixed. Right? We know that. We know things happen in life because of those situations. Some of us are fortunate to have funds like that, but she did not. And in Arizona, there is no rent ceiling. It does not coincide with the money that you make. So I said, okay, I cannot provide you housing stability and eviction. That's not in our program. You can have both. But I can work with you with the resources because who I partner with. So I said, let's call your landlord and let's see if you can do a promise to pay. Well, I can tell you the landlord said no. The landlord said no. She was like, what am I gonna do? I said, let's get the lease together. We did the scope of services. She signed the agreement, went through her lease with her, read it. She never read her lease. She just signed it. She was so excited to move. She didn't care what the verbiage was. So we went through the lease, and I said, have you ever been late on your rent? And she said, well, these last few months I have, because I had only been working one job. I wasn't working another job because of the fact I couldn't do Uber or Lyft. And I said, well, it says in your lease that rent is due by the 1st, but she gave her to the 5th. So she gave her, hey, grace period. Now in Arizona, there is no grace period. If your rent is due on the 1st, after the 2nd, it can give you a 5-day notice. But in the lease, she put after the 5th day, I'll give you a grace period. So she said, I've been paying it by the 4th. But the management company, they were charging her late fees after the the 1st. So I went back, we contacted the leasing agent, and I told him what we noticed. And I said, and add it up, it's $220. Now, it might not seem like much to you guys, but when I brought that to the landlord's attention, guess what? They were willing to do a promise to pay. And they wiped away any late fees. Now, being a community leader, you have to have resources. You gotta be on your toes. You gotta know what's out there in the community. So I said, hey, there is a program. Now, I wouldn't say program, but there are affiliates in Arizona where you can take your car to, and they'll pay your deductible if you bring it to them. So it's just out there. And I said, we can try one of these and see if your insurance will allow them to go ahead since they already used it. So she was able to get her car done within 2 weeks. We did a promise to pay. So within those 2 weeks, she's getting her car done. The next 2 weeks, she was already able to do Uber. We offset some costs through the food pantry, but we weren't done. So she was able to stay in her home. Long story short, she was able to make her payments for those 2 weeks, because you have to make the payments before the next month because you're already in another rent payment system. So by the end of the month, she was able to pay her rent. But we looked another way. We looked at resources for budgeting, because now you still, even though you're working that other job, what if something else happens? Are you living the means of what your income is? We have to prevent this from happening again. And so we looked at that even further. And through community partnerships, we found her some affordable housing that she was able to get to. That was not a waiting list. But because of those resources and the connections in the community that we have, we were able to do that. So this is how valuable the program is. We're educating clients we come in contact with. We're informing them about the process. We're providing safe places, because I don't know how honest you could be if I was a lawyer. I just don't know. But that safe place and that trust, because I'm a grassroots nonprofit, which we do all the time with our families. We put in notices in their food boxes to let them know what this is what we do. This is how we can serve you, right? Because they don't know how valuable or the resources of what we do in the community. And so I just want to share that with you, that, you know, we take a step above and beyond for the people we serve, because that's our duty as a nonprofit organization, social benefit organization, how you want to say it, but that's our duty for our people to be there, to learn, to be here is our duty, so I can take back to the people that I serve other resources and how we're working to be better on serving the people through access to justice. So I just wanted to share that with you.